Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, we're talking education with Alexander Marks of the Nevada State Education Association and Bryan Wachter of the Retail Association of Nevada. Here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
For 50 years, Nevada Heating has been keeping people comfortable in their homes. At Nevada Heating, call the Do It Right guys and get the air conditioning back on today. That's the Nevada Heating way. Why sweat for days on end when Nevada Heating can get your air conditioning fixed today? Call us today and we'll fix it today at 323-5585 or schedule us on our website at nevadaheating.com.
It's the $100,000 Cash is King Progressive giveaways at Carson Valley Inn. Giveaways every Saturday with a Progressive up to $20,000 and $15,000 in guaranteed grand prize giveaways. There's another 100,000 reasons to play and win at the Carson Valley Inn.
What do you count on? You count on your power every day. At NV Energy, we've always powered what's important to you, but we're not looking at the past. We're focused on the future. While our standards are high, our rates will remain low. And our commitment to renewables isn't just meeting standards, but leading the way. Because you can count on more than just your power. You can count on the company who brings it to you. That's our promise. You can count on it.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we are pleased to welcome back to the program two of my favorite people. Bryan Wachter is here. He's the Senior Vice President of the Retail Association of Nevada, and Alexander Marks with NSEA. He is Director of Strategy. Pleasure to have you both here.
Good to be back, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
I want to start with you, Bryan, because you wrote a front page article for your Nevada News magazine called The Future of Nevada's Industry, the Imperative of K-12 Accountability. Would you like to share with the audience and Alexander what you were writing about and your thoughts on it?
You know, certainly it seems almost, I think, at the end of a lot of sessions, we've had continual large, significant increases in financing and investment in public education. And yet we don't seem to have any of these results that are actually going to benefit kind of kids that are in the system now. You know, for instance, the Clark County School District promoted more fifth graders to sixth grade who were not proficient or at grade level than they didn't. And those have lifetime earning implications for those particular students, but they also have lifetime implications for our economy in Nevada and how we continue to grow. And so this problem continues to keep coming home to roost, so to speak, Sam. And we really, in addition to those heavy investments and financing options, really need to start looking at what that accountability looks like in our school districts.
You know, Alexander, over the years, I think pretty much every time I've interviewed you or anybody else from the education system, and I've asked how much money would get us to where we need to get to, the answer was usually $1 billion. So in this session, we got to $2.25 billion of additional funding going to education. How do you respond, therefore, to what Bryan's saying?
Well, you've asked me that question so many times. That's the only question I prep when I come on this show.
Nothing wrong with going back and looking.
We'll kind of split it up. I think, you know, we definitely agree with the accountability measures. We supported the measures during the sessions. We were there at the table in support of, you know, making sure that the dollars are going to where they need to in the classrooms. And we were happy to see that some of those bills were passed. You know, the 2 days of the superintendent hearing, I don't know if was as effective as some of the things we'd hoped would happen. And I think we're kind of seeing what that looks like now and bargaining, and especially in Clark County. But I think, you know, yes, the $2 billion over the, you know, each year, that's great. That is a good start. But accounting for most of that, you know, quote, historic increase, with inflation and the chronic underfunding over the last years, like it will get eaten up pretty quick. They had the first meeting of the Commission on School Funding was held a couple weeks ago. This is the first one they've had since September of 2022. Chair Guy Hobbs is actually in about 60 days going to be presenting another report of where we stand after that $2 billion investment. So we're kind of waiting to see what we need. I think it's still going to be about a $2 billion a year increase, which over the next 10 years. This last session did, cut away a couple years of that, which is a good start. But in terms of meeting the Commission on School Funding's plan and the recommendations, we made no movement on that during the legislative session at all. We had that $2 billion, but we have no plan for that next $2 billion. And at the end of the day, we are still $4,000 per pupil behind where we need to be. But once we get there, I'm optimistic we will, hopefully one day. But the accountability is that second piece, right? Like, where is it going? Is it making it to where it needs to make a difference, like Bryan said, in terms of, the proficiency levels and those sorts of things?
Bryan, you want to respond?
Well, I think it's interesting. We're going to have to pick on the Commission on School Funding, whether we're supporting that as a community or not, because that commission outlined, I think, some pretty, in Rand's opinion, reasonable steps in order to provide some tax reform and the potential for an identified revenue source going forward that can pay for what Alex and the rest of the education community is looking for. And to Mr. March's point, that was not talked about during session at all. We were spending the windfall that was generated through a majority increase in sales tax with a little bit of cream on the top from an overperforming gaming industry. And that's what those dollars got divided on now. So we are still, regardless of the $2.25 billion investment, into education, left with the situation that we don't know how we're going to fund that moving forward. And we certainly don't know how we're going to fund that in addition to the other things that NSEA and CCEA might want. And so we actually baked into this particular biennium quite a bit of dollars that at the moment we don't know that they're going to be replicated.
Your thoughts, Alex?
I agree. I think, the Commission on School Funding has essentially said there are two sources of tax revenue that have the capacity to get us to optimal funding. That is sales and property. So I know folks will say that there's not the political will for it, but, the legislature keeps creating this committee, right? So they created it. It was supposed to sunset in 3 years, and they said, nope, we still need them to do a lot of work. It's kind of ironic that they ignored their recommendations for basically 2 sessions now, but then gave them more to do in terms of their scope of public education. But, whether we have the political will at the legislature, I think the votes aren't there. We always hear that, but, that's not an acceptable answer anymore. Nevadans elected them to fix problems. They haven't. Kudos, I think, to Senator Neal, who is the only one who may have ran any types of their recommendations at the legislature. It didn't, might have gotten a hearing, but it never made it out of committee. But, we have other sources of taxes, but in terms of the 2 primary ones that, the top 10 states top 10 states within the country have looked at, it's sales and property. So that's, what their recommendations are. And at this point, that's what we have to go by, because, this, again, is a legislatively created committee that was tasked with finding optimal funding in education, and that's where they found it.
Alex, do you think that anybody in the legislature is going to seriously push forward with changing the property taxes when they sit currently at a limit of 3% and 8% for residential and businesses? Even though I've said on the program 1,000 times that it's not even constitutional, but who's going to argue with the constitutionality if you're not going to raise the taxes?
Well, I'm sure LCP can give an opinion to say whatever they needed to say, but that's besides the point. But no, I agree. I think, again, that's the political will, right? Do they have that political will, or do they want to come back every 2 years and say, well, we can't do it this year. How about 2 more years? How about 2 more years? So the scope of the commission is, they always look at a 10-year plan, right? So we shaved off 2-3 years from this year, starting with the new commission now that will be moving forward. They're still looking at that 10-year plan, right? So it's not just a 7-year plan and then they, dust their hands off and they're done. So I agree. I know it's an uphill battle. I But, in terms of how we get to optimal funding, that is what the legislatively created Committee on School Funding has found to be the only way that we can do that. So if we ignore the property and sales tax, then we have no means to actually get there.
Bryan, do you see any will to raise the sales tax?
Well, when retail polls significantly, especially when we're asking about closing loopholes or modernizing the sales tax in order to represent how commerce is more conducted these days, we actually get very broad support. Upwards of 65% of Nevada voters think that we need to start applying sales tax to more and more of the internet. And that, the fact that you can buy a Kindle book right now without being charged sales tax, but you go into a brick or mortar or a video game, for instance. You buy a video game on your PS5, download it directly, there's no sales tax paid there. And Senator Neal has been working hard, and I would hope that any organization that is looking for additional education resources are reaching out to her and making that a big push. It has gotten out of Senate taxation the last 2 sessions and has found its way into the black pit that is Senate finance. But there's a little bit more urgency to it as well, Sam, is that almost the entire state, a significant portion of the state, is based and funded on sales tax. And the sales tax is going to continue to erode. And all of those local governments and school districts in the state are going to be left with a revenue stream that is continually producing less over time. And so this isn't just an education problem, this is a state finance problem. And whether they want to deal with it now or later, the problem's going to get dealt with. All
right, and so what is the solution in your opinion?
The solution needs to be a hard look at taxing the 84% of the Nevada economy that goes untaxed right now, which is services, and to start having that conversation about what that looks like in order to, I think, potentially even lower the tangible and digital goods sales rate in order to compensate. But right now, the vast majority of Nevada's economy goes untaxed.
How do you feel about that, Alexander?
I agree. We've actually supported Senator Neal's bill on the sales tax internet parity the last 2 sessions. We'd love to see that bill finally get to a floor vote. I think in terms of revenue being on the table, we're open to all forms. We need to make sure, there's always the gaming tax that's floating out there. I think during the special session, we heard about the LET exemptions for some of the stadium stuff. I think at this point, anything that's going to help our economy, or education that we can build from the economy is something we're going to support. And we're usually at the table and support of most of those things.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back much more on education, which is on pretty much everybody's mind after this timeout.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
Early in the morning or throughout the night, professional truck drivers are on the job, serving you, safely moving freight that's crucial to our economy. From the oldest industries to our newest innovators, from the exotic to the everyday, trucks are everywhere, moving everything. Never afraid to embrace a future that makes Nevada and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Bryan Wachter of the Retail Association of Nevada and Alexander Marks of the NSEA, talking about education. Alex, there was a Nevada Views article in the Las Vegas Review-Journal over the weekend. There was headline, "Pay Teachers Whatever It Takes." And this gentleman had served in Afghanistan and thought that coming into teaching would be an easy move for him, and he would be able to handle this really well, and discovered that it was really disastrous. Classes, sometimes as many as 46 kids. In a typical class of 42 students, about 5 of these students speak no English. Several more would have individualized education plans requiring significant accommodation or individual instruction. The school he taught at had a chronic truancy problem with 30% of the students not showing up each day. What are your thoughts on this? He says pay teachers whatever it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they should. Our campaign for the last year and a half was called Time for 20. It was the 20% salary increase, $20 minimum wage in our schools, and 20 students per class. When it started, it was aspirational, and then we realized how much money we might be playing around with at the legislative session, and it became a reality. Our position was still educators deserve at least a 20% salary increase. I think that was our goal during session. It's still our goal during bargaining. I think when you see what's happening in like LA County and New Mexico with their 20% salary increases, especially within New Mexico where their class vacancies for teachers dropped about 34%. That's what you got to do. I think Nevada tried to do that with Senate Bill 231, and I don't think it was as successful as they thought it would. But I think that bill is a good example of what happens when the legislature refuses to listen to the actual stakeholders involved. But I don't think anybody is shy about the amount of issues we have in public education. I think, when you see some of the other priorities, like, I don't know, a stadium or a film tax credit, these are the kinds of issues that the gentleman in the sun laid out that kind of fall through the cracks because they get focused on things that they shouldn't be focused on. I think the gentleman is correct. Pay them what they want. That's why we go to the bargaining table. The money was there, and we should pay him at least a 20% salary increase.
Okay, and I just want to point out it was the Las Vegas Review-Journal where the letter appeared. Bryan, your response?
I think teachers deserve a very fair and consistent salary schedule, as well as the ability to certainly make sure that they're progressing forward. I think it's important to put into context, right? We've done a lot over the last decade to increase, say, the starting salary. The average teacher in Clark County costs each school budget just over $90,000 a year, and so when you include benefits and the healthcare, it's not an insignificant amount of money. But that being said, I would argue I'm not sure how paying that teacher more is going to teach those 5 kids English. I don't know how paying that teacher more is going to solve the absentee rate, which is pushing over 50% for some of our key demographics. I'm not sure how raising that teacher salary is going to get the site-based disciplinary team to actually respond to teacher concerns. I'm not sure how increasing that salary is going to, make sure that our schools are safer and to make sure that our teachers feel like they can walk into the building and know that they're walking home at night. And so I think the salary is important, but a lot of the things that gentleman addressed in that letter, I'm not entirely sure solved by increasing salaries. And it might be nice to say that, we should pay them whatever we want, but we have to remember that those dollars are coming from taxpayers who are also struggling to continue their lives and to support their families and to support their children. And so it's not an unlimited amount of money, even if it could solve those problems, but we've seen no evidence that it can solve those problems.
Alex, your response?
But I think that was part of the prong of having the reduced class size. So I think one of the issues that we saw during the legislative session is they failed to reduce class sizes. There was one effort to reduce class sizes, and it didn't even get a hearing. So I think to some of the gentleman's issues within that article, if he had fewer students in a class, he would have that one-on-one instruction time. He might be able to solve some of the issues in there. But when you have 40 plus kids in a class, it gets hard to figure out how to address everybody and give that one-on-one instruction time, which is why the class size reduction part of our efforts are so important. I think, part of the other efforts we were working on, something we just labeled as the Respect Educator Act, I think was also important. This was disciplinary issues. This was workload issues. This was a lot of things that go to the morale and culture of public education that aren't necessarily financial. I think if we, there was another piece I think I read over the weekend somewhere of, or even just Twitter. I mean, open Twitter anytime, you'll see it, of people going, I moved here, I've been in Clark County School District for a week and I've resigned. That's how bad the culture is, I think, for some of these folks. And, I think when you're less than a month in and you're already talking about quitting, so of course, money's not certainly the problem. There's got to be another issue there. But it is happening in almost every school. And I think that's part of the issue of the class size reduction, the culture, the morale's low. That's not necessarily solved by a larger paycheck. That probably doesn't hurt, but in terms of addressing, the actual root causes of overcrowded class sizes, building schools, a litany of issues that would solve a lot of the problems that gentleman is addressing.
Bryan?
Well, I guess I would ask how much of the $2 billion NSEA wanted earmarked for capital improvements and for new buildings. That wasn't part of the conversation. And if we're going to talk about lowering class sizes, we need the buildings. And the other thing I'd say is, in my experience, sitting on some of the school organizational teams at elementary, middle, and high school levels, when the issue has come up and there's always been a choice for the SOT to make, that we could choose to lower class sizes or we could choose to fund another, it's always the staff and the teachers and the admin who are arguing that the class size reduction isn't as priority as we're kind of led to believe in a lot of these discussions. And so the talking point is one thing, Sam, but in those budget meetings, when push comes to shove, class size reduction doesn't seem to be the choice that, at least in my experience, those schools are making.
All right, let's take another break and we'll be right back with more on education after this timeout. Big R in Sparks is located on Bering Boulevard next to Smith's and across from Reed High School for workwear and everyday wear, evaporative coolers, outdoor living, Weber's, Traeger's, and Lodge. Fill your propane tanks here. Big R on Bering Boulevard in Sparks next to Smith's and across from Reed High School. Big R. Hardware, clothing, and a whole lot more.
Remember 2010 in Northern Nevada, 13 to 14% unemployment, thousands of homes in foreclosure, Nevada's casinos closing? Families in the Reno-Sparks area were hurting. Many were losing everything. Then Story County launched a game changer for our region, a public-private industrial partnership, streamlined permitting, slashed bureaucracy, attracting Fortune 500 companies that made Nevada their home. Story County generated a river of cash to area communities. Economic studies by the state and others for the Gigafactory consistently show positive economic benefits for our region. $4 billion in local wages, $17 billion in consumer spending and economic activity, over $100 million in taxes to Washoe, Story, Reno, Sparks, and Nevada, just for the Gigafactory alone. Story County, improving Northern Nevada one industry at a time.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Fantastic cocktails and delicious food.
It's a good time to eat.
Over 500 hot slots, plus electronic table games.
It's a good time to play.
Player rewards and big-time jackpots.
It's a good time to win.
Ooh, your good times at Tamarack.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Alexander Marks. He is with the Nevada State Education Association, and Bryan Wachter with the Retail Association of Nevada. We're talking about education. One of the things that just concerns me so much is, you know, the level of proficiency in English, math, and reading, Bryan. It just seems that we're failing these kids in these three super important areas.
There's not much more to be said, Sam. We are 100% failing these kids. The number of kids that are proficient in all three is even shockingly low. And then when you start breaking down into some of those minority groups, we're talking 50, 60%. It's very difficult as a community, as a parent, and as a business community to suggest that we need another $7 or $8 billion when our kids are being set up to fail. They're being passed along to fail, and the public seems to be talking a lot about these adult issues, certainly at the board meetings, but we don't seem to be talking about the results that our kids are getting and setting them up for success in the future.
Alex?
Yeah, I think, I mean, certainly the proficiency levels are troubling, but I would disagree. I think it is still a funding issue at the end of the day. I think, it's the funding, it's the accountability. Where is the money going? Is district leadership an issue? I think, Clark County is a very good example of that. And I think, there's a lot to be said for who's at the top and helping further these issues along and who's advocating for them.
And that's where we have to leave it. Gentlemen, thank you very much. An informative discussion. I appreciate you both being here as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
And we'll be right back.
Thanks, Sam.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
Southwest Specialties has been making the homes and businesses of Nevada beautiful for more than 20 years. Their experienced designers and craftsmen create the walkways, backyards, water features, and a variety of outdoor cooking areas that add curb appeal and value to your investment. Call today or visit them at their website and see how they can make your outdoor spaces special. Southwest Specialties, creative, distinctive, beautiful.
7 at 7 is a newscast built for your smartphone. It's a 7-minute newscast available every weekday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. at lvrj.com. We don't waste your time, and we give you the day's top stories.
We at the RJ have noticed some similarities between us and a certain BTS character, RJ.
Plus the latest in Las Vegas business, weather, health, and entertainment news. 7 at 7 streaming now on your smartphone.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Event Center sits at the heart of the Las Vegas Strip. 2 floors of meeting and event space are ideal for groups and conventions. Stay in one of 200 luxurious rooms and suites. Brand your event throughout the property. Flexible event spaces make for easy planning and personalization. Take over the entire hotel with a full buyout option.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers. We'll see you on the next broadcast.